I used to take the trolley a lot, and I think there's a really bad story in me, maybe, or a poem, about wanting to turn back the clock into last winter, to saying goodbye to you on the trolley deep in the night after work and hopping off. I punched your shoulder, and then I thought maybe that we both wondered what that meant when we looked each other in the eye. I assured myself I was fitting myself into a category apart. The lights glittered in the trees, and it was freezing. If we turn back the clock to then, we could also turn it back to early fall that same year, when I caught you by chance on the trolley. And you were holding a box. It was my birthday, and my party was later that night. And in the box was a donut, which you were on your way to give me because you said that you couldn't make it to my party because you had work the next day, and I just hadn't seen the text yet. The donut was a surprise. It was very stale. I wonder what might have happened if you'd attended that party, if you'd seen me dance, if you'd danced with me. But if we could turn back to that a year ago, we could also turn back to the first time we met. I don't remember if I shook your hand. But if we turn back the clock to then, we could also turn back to when we were children, to the things that shaped us, or to when there were people scattered differently on different lands across the earth, or before there was language for any of this. We could turn back to when everything was a shallow, salty sea. Fungus ruled the earth long ago, maybe in forms that we wouldn't recognize. Everything calm, everything hot, everything steamy. When I was little, I was obsessed with dinosaurs. I didn't care what came before them, and honestly little about what came after. They were the best, and I knew all their names, but I can't really recall them now. A little later, I got interested in how before there were dinosaurs, there were the fishes. The bony fishes, property of the Devonian period, before crustaceans. And that brings us to this. The age of bony fishes. Those sculptors from the 70s always said they weren't from New York, preferring a field or the lake for the salt of it. But then everyone kept getting tickets for doing 90 on the Taconic, rushing back into what they liked to remember was a vortex, at least comprehensible. Like us, winding along close, too close to the wall with the trees, sticks against the pearly sky. Sunbursts blind us in the front seat. Visors up, visors down, she tells me about the Bryn Mawr professor found lying in a pool of blood next to the older woman in her kitchen, who she'd bludgeoned with a brick over and over, saying over and over, I love you, I love you, I love you, and I always have. How could you not have known? She told the detectives this. I almost say I would do that, but I'm not sure soon enough if that's true, and the moment passes. We swerve too near, and I hand her a handful of roasted nuts. I admire how she looks at me from the driver's seat because I can't look away from the lines when I drive. I got my license kind of late. Her legs thinner this winter in black tights, and her hands small on the wheel like two fish, or maybe geckos. She tells me she owes me one. I don't know what she means. I don't know what it is she thinks she does, but it doesn't matter really because I want it all and want no one in debt. Who didn't take out a loan? I see myself standing on the curb under the awning of the gas station where she admitted she thought to leave me in the opening shot of an indie movie. Her leopard lap and her eyes the transparency of the sky and her nervous coffee. I want her to say, I love you, I love you, I love you. How could you not have known? I want to memorize the names of all the ages, Jurassic, Triassic, and stuff like that, but I'm not very good at retaining them. Sometimes I feel like a fortress. And then sometimes I feel like I have no walls at all. And sometimes, really most of the time, I feel more like the moon, which I don't notice is changing until I look at a photo or I haven't looked in the mirror for a really long time. I like to think of the funguses waving in the moon. Interesting to think that there was a moon before there was a word for it, or that it was somehow more itself before it was named. With the funguses, there are also the microbes, which hold the key to everything we have now, especially now, actually. Bacteria, fungus, and viruses. I learned recently that lichen is actually a symbiotic relationship between I think, a bacteria and a fungus. It's actually not one organism. But I'm not a scientist. Honestly, being a bacteria or being a fungus or being any kind of microbe sounds kind of boring to me because you don't have gender. Or maybe they do, but we just don't understand it. But I think that's so much of how we relate to each other that I wonder what it's like to relate as a microbe. Because I love men. When I was little, I said Fred like it was a person. Half of a gay couple in the 90s, maybe. Your parents' friends, Needle and Fred. In my head, there's a card with an illustration of a spool, red or orange, I can't remember. A matching game? I think of all the boys I know who sew, and I love them for it. Elliot told me the point of Passover is telling the same stories over and over again until you get to the center. How many licks? When Rob taught me how to roll, all I could think about was how the tobacco looked like the stringy chicken he would get on white bread for lunch in first grade. Climbing out the window, I asked Sam, does he want this when he moves? Or can I have that too? Can I have him? Every day becomes that holiday when you ask people to forgive you. I want to be remembered well. I wonder what my tombstone will say if I'll have one, what my last name will be, what my first name, a gyroscope of Andrew, Henry, Matthew, John. Who decides when he becomes a Jack and when he stops? I catch his eye and our smiles eat each other wide. The roof is always scratchy. My shorts, for sitting, too short. Sometimes I wonder if the moon will implode by itself, just from pressure. But I don't really know if that's what this story is about. That's all I got. Thank you for watching. That's the end of the show for this time. Maybe next time there'll be something new. Hope you enjoyed.